Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today I wanted to go over an overall market update just because we've actually seen something really interesting just happen, and we've actually broken new all-time highs in a pretty key metric that in my opinion kind of dictates the overall health and interest in the crypto market. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So starting out, what I want to start with was the liquidation heat map, and what we can see overall is over the past 24 hours we've seen $124 million wrecked. Obviously a pretty decent chunk, but not as much as what we've seen over the past several days. We can see, on the 24-hour liquidation, looking here at the very top, we can see that, still showing $124 million liquidated, but that's not actually 58% from yesterday. Yesterday was a pretty intense day as far as wrecking liquidation and leverage, just because we did see a couple pretty violent and unpredictable moves. And so I think that's kind of why we saw so much of that. But what we can see is, most of what was liquidated on Bitcoin was shorts, while in Ethereum and kind of the majority of the rest of the market, it was kind of favoring liquidating longs, other than, basically Bitcoin, Sol, Sui, and Doge. So overall, still a very mixed market. There's been a lot of chop going on, and this is kind of why we're seeing so much liquidation, and also so much liquidation on both sides. We can see, if we're looking at it by exchanges, we can see, only 60% longs, 50% shorts. So, not as much of a bias as we have seen at some points in the past, especially if we see large moves up. Sometimes we'll see large unexpected moves, I guess I should say. We've seen sometimes, $400 or $500 million wrecked, and it's like 98% shorts or longs or whatever, right? And so, obviously we haven't seen that yet, but it does remain a possibility, especially if we start to look at the Bitcoin chart. We'll look at that here in a second, but, it is kind of sitting in a pretty pivotal place. However, right now we're looking at the total crypto market cap chart, and this is excluding Bitcoin and Ethereum. So it's basically all alts not called Bitcoin or Ethereum. And what we actually can see over the past couple of months, obviously we had that kind of capitulation event in early August from the yen carry trade unwind. And what we have seen ever since that essentially is kind of higher lows and higher highs being made, which is actually really nice, because if we look at the Bitcoin chart, we can see, I guess I actually probably should expand this out. We'll look at the day, but we can see on the Bitcoin chart for months and months and months, we have recently started kind of making new, higher lows, higher highs, but for months and months and months, we've been looking at lower highs, lower lows, kind of sitting in this downward channel. It does look that there's a possibility that we may have broken out of that if we look kind of closer in here. We have closed above it, and we're kind of staying above it right now, both actually at this point, but it does kind of remain a very likely possibility that we do kind of break back down into the channel and continue to liquidate as much leverage as humanly possible. But going back to the overall crypto chart, we can see, this is starting to look really nice for alts. We did see, this is just over a year ago back on this side. We can see, a total crypto market cap of somewhere around 315 billion. We did a relatively quick run up to about 788, just shy of 800 billion. And now we're sitting here at about 617 billion. So overall, some pretty decent movement within the kind of wider altcoin market this year. I do think that this cycle is when we'll really start to see the altcoin market kind of eclipse kind of Bitcoin and Ethereum is kind of being the majority of the market, just because I do think if we're going to have a healthy market, that probably does need to happen at some point. Maybe not this cycle necessarily, but at some point I do think that we will need to see that. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to, and kind of what I'm looking toward, kind of just as a general gauge in the crypto market. I do think we will see that, just because we are starting to see a lot more product market fit. We are starting to see a lot more products and applications and items and things like that are actually useful and valuable. And so people are kind of starting to turn on to a lot of that. If you are wanting to trade any of this leverage, you can see, this is my Margex account. I have been trading over the past several months, kind of through a lot of this type of stuff. The range bound trading really is relative, at least for me. You have to kind of find what your strengths are, but at least for me, this range bound trading is actually pretty nice for me, because I kind of know, kind of where the limits are here, when to buy, when to sell, all that type of stuff, especially kind of looking at supports and resistances. We can see, we did kind of run up, touch the support, and now we've since come back down from that. So, obviously they are very helpful. If you are wanting to trade either leverage or spot, I do have two exchanges. This is obviously Margex. That'll be the first link in my description. I do also have WEEX. WEEX allows for spot trading, and they also do leverage trading as well. They actually let, Margex will let you trade up to 100x leverage, and WEEX will let you trade up to, I believe, 200x leverage. So if you're looking to trade with even more leverage for whatever reason, you can feel free to do that there. Also, if you just want to trade spot exchanges, and I know there are a lot of people who are kind of, very, very strongly against leverage, which frankly, I can't really blame you. You can use WEEX instead and just use spot trading and kind of use that just for accumulation and just trading the overall market, but without leverage. So if you are interested, those are in my description below. Just feel free to check those out. Also, since you're here, if you are enjoying the content, please do give me a like and subscribe. It really does help me, help push my content kind of further out into the YouTube algorithm and hopefully provide this useful information to more people. So this is actually like the big news that I wanted to get to today. This is the Bitcoin futures open interest. Now there's multiple different futures open interest here. We can see Ethereum, but Bitcoin is kind of like, this is the one that leads the market. This is the one where kind of most people have their interest in. And what we can see is Bitcoin futures open interest has actually hit new all-time highs, which is actually really, really bullish and, in my opinion, pretty surprising. We've hit new all-time highs in terms of open interest, where obviously, we are creeping back up toward all-time highs, but we have definitely not broken all-time highs yet. And so this is something that is actually looking really, really good. We can see, the total open interest currently is just shy of $40 billion. And if we look at the CME, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, we can see that they're at about 12.25 billion. So, again, all-time highs sitting on both of these, while we haven't even broken all-time highs on Bitcoin price yet. So this, to me, what we can see is, here's the 2021, kind of the first part of the 2021 bull run. Then we had kind of the second peak here. We only ever saw, 5 billion and about 20 billion dollar open interest highs respectively at those points. I guess this came a little bit earlier, about 24 billion. We're sitting close to double that right now, and I think by a lot of people's metrics and a lot of people's kind of perspectives, we haven't really even kicked off kind of this max blow off top peak that we saw here in 2021. And so the fact that we're already breaking all-time highs in open interest, in my opinion, is really, really bullish, and it shows that there's a ton of institutional demand and just overall interest within this space, which is really, really healthy, because that means, obviously when the money and the interest starts to come back, it's going to be flowing, which is good. So I just want to point that out to you. I think this is really, really important news, and something that I think a lot of people are probably overlooking. But this to me is a fundamentally very, very strong and good sign of where we're at, because it just continues to deepen liquidity in the market, which is always a good thing. The next thing I want to take a look at here is the RSI heat map. What we can see is, looking at the 24-hour, we are sitting actually almost right on even. We're at 50.51 is kind of a market average. We do see a pretty decent spread kind of throughout the market here. We've got a couple, handful sitting here and kind of oversold and weak, and then a decent bit more in overbought and strong, but the majority of the market kind of sitting in this neutral territory. If we go out to a week, we do actually get lower on the average, just because we are kind of still recovering from some of that fear, from some of these pullbacks that we saw, particularly in August and September. If we do look at these on the more shorter time frames, we will see everything's kind of sitting within this kind of neutral range. It's all pretty stable right now. We do kind of start to move down on the very, very short time frames, closer toward week, but the average kind of stays within neutral kind of for the overall market. I think this is relatively stable and steady right now for what we're seeing, just because so much of the market is kind of, as I mentioned before, in that no trade zone leading up to the election. That's at least kind of my opinion at this point. I do consider the possibility that maybe we will see Bitcoin start to run before the election, if it starts to become a little bit more clear that Trump may get elected, and he is kind of obviously the pro crypto candidate, and he's kind of shown that, at least so far. If it starts to look relatively clear that he might be the winner, I do start to wonder if we may see Bitcoin and some of these other cryptos start to run actually before the election, just because people are trying to front run that narrative. We have seen a little bit more pervasive level of trying to front run these narratives this time in this cycle, and I think that makes sense, right? People have been around the block a time or two. People have kind of seen how this has worked before in the past, and so they're kind of trying to put two and two together and get that edge on the rest of the market, right? And so I think because of that, we are starting to see a lot more like attempts at front running the market, which like I said, I think that makes sense. The next thing I want to take a look at is the crypto derivatives visual screener. This one and the next one is kind of trying to get a sense on where the market is at currently. What we can see right now is the majority of the market is looking at closing longs and entering shorts. There are only a very few specific cryptos where people are actually closing shorts or entering longs. This is on the 24-hour. If we look at 4-hour, it kind of more of the same. There's definitely a bias towards closing longs and entering shorts. And then, on the 1 hour, it's kind of spread all over the place. And then anything kind of less than that, I don't think that's more noise than signal, in my opinion. But yeah, so overall, kind of a split market still, a bias toward closing longs and entering shorts, which in my opinion, if this is kind of what the majority of the market is doing, that to me indicates that we might actually be looking to move up, because usually the market goes in the opposite direction of what people think. However, if we look at the Bitcoin liquidation map, we can see that at least on the 1 day, things are actually pretty even overall. But when we go to the 7 and the 30, there's very much a bias towards liquidating longs, which would indicate a move to the downside. So this is something where, I kind of talk about this now and again on the channel, where I do like to see confluence when I'm trying to trade. And I think it's pretty clear to see where we're at on the chart right now and kind of where the narratives have been. People don't really know what's going to happen, right? There's a lot of mixed signals coming in here. We can see, obviously, this is split. The longer time frames it would be indicating a move down. If you look at the opposite of what people are doing here, it would be looking toward a move up. And there's a lot of noise going on it, and I think there's just a lot of uncertainty. If you look at the long-short split, it's about 50-50. If you look at the chart, we can see that we have broken kind of this upper bound. This is historically, this has kind of been consensus that if/when this happens, Bitcoin is going to really start running pretty quickly and pretty dramatically, just because this is kind of where we've been sitting for several months at this point. And so as soon as this starts to break out, that's what we should see. But also there is kind of the added claim or assumption that a lot of what crypto is going to do is heavily dependent on what happens in the presidential election. And obviously, we're still about 3 weeks away from that. So there's just a lot of speculation, a lot of I don't think really anybody knows what's going on with the market right now. And so that usually makes it a relatively dangerous time to trade. So if you are going to be trading, I would just keep all of that in mind. As I've said before, I usually don't trade unless I kind of see a level of confluence throughout the market. And we are clearly, very, very clearly not seeing that right now. So I'll probably be sitting on my hands, at least for the next little while, until I can see something that seems to make sense. If I am going to be taking a trade, I'm effectively looking at it as like gambling, and I'm essentially expecting to get liquidated, right? So I'm usually going in, very, very tiny, not really looking to lose any sort of money that would be meaningful to me. So that's kind of how I'm playing it right now. Overall, if you found the information in this video useful, like I said, please do give me a like and subscribe. It really, really does help me out. Also, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever, please feel free to drop those in the comment section below as well. I do read and respond, or at least I try to read and respond to all of them. And so if you have anything that you want me to see and maybe even want my thoughts on, or whatever, anything like that, commenting in the comment section really would be the best way to do that. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.